Hello and welcome to the Story Engine podcast. My name is Kyle Gray, and today on the show we have Patrick Thean. Patrick is a CEO coach and expert in helping executives lead more effectively, live better, achieve their dreams, and increase the value of their businesses. The life of a CEO is very complicated and challenging, and Patrick has many different systems and methodologies to help people get in a better rhythm of leadership. And we are going to be exploring those today and co-creating a story with him to reach more of those CEOs. So without any further ado, let's hand it over to Patrick. Patrick Thean, welcome to the Story Engine podcast.
Well, thank you for having me here, Kyle. Thank you.
I am so excited to dive in with you. You are an expert in executives and executive success, which is one of my favorite conversations that I explore all the time. But before we get started in that, could you tell us a little bit about who you are and how you're showing up in the world today?
Yeah, so who I am is I am, I think of myself as someone who serves, and I serve. So, and in that regard, I'm a dad. I've got two wonderful daughters. I'm a husband. I got a beautiful wife, and I have a company. So I've got about 30 employees that in this firm that all we do is we help serve CEOs and companies to help them succeed, help them to avoid failure, because I view that as a very difficult job. And frankly, the success rate for CEOs is very low. So I help people. I help CEOs succeed and achieve their dreams. And we have a whole methodology. Our company has a methodology and a process and software to help people do that.
Yeah, I'd love to explore even the definition of CEO before we dive into this, because I think that it's a word or an acronym, I guess, that a lot of us understand, but that could be of a very small company or a larger company. Do you have a specific niche or group of people that you're working with? Where does a CEO really start for you?
Yeah, so we help companies that, and you're right, it's a very wide thing, but we specialize with helping CEOs who are running mid-market firms which are growing. They typically have north of 10 million in revenue, and typically south of about 300 million in revenue. So that's kind of our sweet spot. We have lots of clients that have grown beyond that, but they've typically grown with us. We typically do not look for clients which are much bigger than that, and we just help them grow, and they just get there.
In that case, they're getting there. What is there for you? If we're starting from anywhere from 10 to 300 million and people are growing with you for a long time, where's the upper limit of that for you guys?
There is no upper limit. We do not stop serving a CEO as long as they want to work with us. My latest book, The Journey to CEO Success, is a good example. It's actually authored by my first customer, who is still my customer. So I've coached Michael Prager now for 25 years. Walked with him as an entrepreneur, starting Avid Exchange back in 2000, and growing it quickly, achieved unicorn status. In other words, a privately held firm valued north of $1 billion in value. And then he took the company public in 2021, October, NASDAQ stock exchange public. He recently, I guess 2 months ago, brought it back private with the help of a private equity firm. Company was, I think, valued at 2.4 or 2.6 billion when he came private again in October. And now he's the CEO running that company still. So 25 years I've been walking with Michael Prager, and we chose to distill all the lessons we've learned together, him and I, over the last 25 years into this book, The Journey to CEO Success. 7 key practices that every CEO should have. So that's a good story for us.
Love it. I'm curious about what success means. In my experience, not just working with CEOs, but many different kinds of experts and highly talented, high achieving people, success is kind of shifting sands for them. And
Yes.
if they don't often think about what that really means to them as much as would be beneficial, and
Yeah.
a lot of times they're kind of driving and pushing just by their nature of being an achiever. They're trying to grow bigger, bigger, like we're saying 10 million to 300 million. And even in this story you told, the company was a unicorn valued at $1 billion, and went public and then went private again. And so it sounds like the success and how you were relating to it was evolving throughout this. So what does success really mean in
Yeah.
the world of executives or
I think that's a
CEOs?
really good question. I think success means different things to different people. I think the less experienced, younger executives and CEOs that we coach think of success by financial success and the company success. Now, for a business person, entrepreneur, CEO, whatever, uh, it's good to do that, but it can be dangerous, right? Because if your identity is wrapped up only in that, then if you change your job, or if you are asked to move on, it's challenging because you feel like you're not successful. So I think that's a very good question. Now I'll share with you how I look at success. For me, I look at success as having a combination of joy and success. So if you view success being financial, or you view success being, achieving certain things, certain goals in life, to me it's a combination of having joy and success at the same time. And for me, my vision of success for what I do and what my clients are doing, I want to help all my customers become the best version of themselves to achieve the greatest success they can as the best version of themselves, with a combination of joyfulness and tangible success. So that's my definition of success for myself and for the people that we work.
Amazing. I'm really curious. You're much smarter than me and much more experienced in this world, but I've been developing a theory, and I think this thing happens. Usually, like I work with smaller companies, but I think the same thing is happening here. Of when you say becoming the best version of themselves, and a lot of times when I start working with people, they come to me and they're very busy. And of course, they're busy, and like CEOs and executives are busy, but it's kind of this high achiever mindset. And they've learned to solve most of their problems by being a real hardworking person.
Yes.
And there's a certain level of scale where that becomes a real problem because you can't outwork all of the problems that get created. And this actually shows up in how people give their talks and give their speeches. Somebody who's trying to outwork their problems will try and give as much information as possible in a talk. And it usually means they discount who they are, kind of going back to being the best version of themselves. They undervalue their own person, their story, and their perspective. And by weaving in better stories, it not only helps you relate and get better results from the stage, but when entrepreneurs and executives can recognize the value in who they are as a tool for leadership, then they stop trying to work so hard and solve their problems by working and actually leading teams with their vision, which I think is probably, like, if I were to imagine what success would be like as a CEO, it's my team members can take ownership of things and make decisions, and not everything's falling back on me at every minute and everything's on fire all the time.
Yeah. So, I think that okay. So what I've seen is that most CEOs that I work with begin thinking that way, depending on where they're in their journey, right? So experience helps tremendously. But initially, even for myself as a young entrepreneur, I started my first company when I was 26, and I have a very strong work ethic, very hardworking. And so hardworking people tend to think that way, tend to think, hey, I can outwork anybody. I can stay up later and later and later and get it done, which initially works. When your company's small, and you have that work ethic, that mentality, I think is very helpful. But I do
Mhm.
think that, what got you here doesn't necessarily get you to the next place. So at some point, you begin to realize that if you're successful enough, you begin to realize that you can't solve it all. In fact, you begin to realize that I can go really fast by myself for a short time, but if I want to go far, I need to go far with my team. Then you begin to ask yourself, do I have the right team? And what is the right team for me? And all, what does that mean? So I do think that it depends on where you are in your journey. Now,
Mhm.
unfortunately, some people never get out of their own way. They never do. So they're stuck right there. working the butts off, trying to do everything themselves, micromanaging every aspect of that. And that's what they experience the maximum level of success.
Mhm.
Jim Collins wrote the book Good to Great, right? And in the book Good to Great, which is I think the number one best-selling business book of all time, he talks about different levels of leaders, and he talks about the level five leader that really knows how to tap into their team. But he also talks about the level four leader. The level four leader is someone I think he calls it a genius with 1,000 helpers. So yes, I think very intelligent people who work their butts off can stretch. And for some of them, they can manage 100 people. For some of them, they can manage 200 people. Some of them, they can even manage 1,000 people. But at some point, they tap out. Now, where you tap out depends on your elasticity of your capabilities, your intelligence, your ability to work hard, and your natural talent.
Mhm. Are there any other symptoms of I'm really like pushing my hardworking abilities to the limits that we would see occurring? You gave us a few different examples with your
Yeah.
team. I also imagine if you're micromanaging your team, they're going to start to resent you, or you're going to train them not to think for themselves, which
Yes.
is bad. But what else could we see?
Well, I would say, it starts with you. It starts with the person. I think the symptoms start with you. I think you begin to feel, for myself, I began to feel, frankly, that I was getting tired. I was getting burnt out. How long can you maintain this? 1 year, 2 years? For me, I maintained for 7 years. My very first company, for 7 years, I slept very little. I worked my butt off. I was very kind to my people, but I pushed them really hard. But finally, I would say that what I saw was I was getting worn out, and I was getting irritable, irritated. And when you have lack of sleep over a long time, it shows up. It shows up in your interaction with people. It shows up in your what I call your joy index. How joyful are you doing the things you're doing? And when you get burnt out, even the things that you do well that you enjoy, you begin to enjoy it less. So I think those are the early symptoms, really, of how you're feeling.
What were the things that you enjoyed less at this time?
Well, even my work. So I love work. Actually, I love my work. But back in those days, I would say I enjoyed my work a whole lot less. And in fact, there was one time as I was, burning out, I told my wife, I said, "Hey, you know what I feel like?" I said, "I feel like I'm this Chinese dish on a table on a lazy Susan spinning around, and my customers and my employees have chopsticks and they're just taking pieces out of me." So when you begin to think that way, you begin to enjoy it less. Like, I'm tired, I don't have time for you, you're taking a piece out of me. So a victim mentality begins to set in, and you may not even realize this because this is happening slowly over time, right? Slowly over time, and suddenly one day you wake up and you go, "What the hell?" So you didn't get to "what the hell" in one day. You got to that over years, and maybe for me, I felt like my stamina. I got to work harder. I got to be stronger. I got to right. So you think that you need to be stronger, better, faster. When actually, if you had someone that was working with you that would observe these changes in you, maybe you realize that no, actually, you need to slow down a little bit. You need to do some more reflection. You need to work on yourself, and then you can really be a better leader for everybody else. So that's the work that I do today. So today, what I do is, I'm an author, I'm a coach, and I help CEOs achieve their best. And so when I interact with a CEO, a lot of them don't see this. They don't see this. They don't see that they are overworking and therefore underperforming. In fact, uh, it's what I call a vicious cycle, right? If I'm underperforming a little bit, what do? I work harder. Of course, I work harder. That's what I'm accustomed to doing. But if you have a coach, someone that can help you, notice that maybe working harder isn't the problem, isn't the solution to your problem. You might open your eyes a little bit. But that's something that's really hard to identify by yourself, for yourself, when you're not having someone to help.
Absolutely. Blind spots, everybody has them. And it's always so nice when they're, usually it's so nice. I guess I've had an acquired taste of my blind spots being revealed, but no, not everybody has. But I would love to hear what's different about your approach. Some of the things you've mentioned, a few things that you've imbued into this book, these practices. But what do you think's most different about you that really helps move the needle in the success rate of the CEOs that read your book or engage with you further?
Well, There are a few things that are different. I don't know which is the most different, but I'll share with you that I believe that I like to work with people that have a conviction about what they're going to do, and so I don't like to work with folks that won't get into the methodology that we're going to do. So basically, we work with people that are coachable, that are convicted to make changes, and then make the commitment. I think nothing starts unless you actually make a commitment. In other words, you can explore things all day long, but then it comes a time when you say, all right, I'm going to do this. When you
Hmm.
choose to do this, that's a commitment. Now, when you make a commitment, there are things you're going to do which are going to need courage. So when a client says to me, "Hey, I want a better performance," blah 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 blah. Okay, well, guess what? If you continue doing what you're doing, you probably won't get better performance. So what that means is there's some things in your life that need to be changed. Okay, what that means is that it probably involves certain people around you, and it probably involves what I call some spicy conversations, some difficult conversations,
Mm.
and you need courage to have those conversations. And in some cases, it might even involve you moving people along, or rather moving them out of your firm that don't belong in your firm anymore, and that takes courage. So I think conviction, commitment, and then the courage to do certain things. Now, once you've done that, you got to own it. You've got to have great ownership over what you're going to do, and then for me, I want to work with people that want to be the best versions of themselves. Now, not everybody understands that, and I think some coaches want to make you better versions of them or mini versions of them. Well, I believe that everybody is a gift from God, and everybody has natural things that should be enhanced. So when I help a CEO and my team helps a CEO, we want to help that person be the best version of themselves. And like I said, we want them to achieve what they're about to achieve, the success, with joy as well. So to do all that, we have we have a book called Rhythm that gives you the how-to on how to put in the right habits, the right rhythms for your company, for yourself, so you can do this, so you can actually commit. And I'll tell you, you're not going to succeed unless you commit and execute and do that repeatedly and relentlessly. So, the thing I love about the NFL, and I'm an NFL fan, by the way. Well, what happens after the Super Bowl is that the next day people wake up and they do it all over again, right? They do it all over again. They do the draft of new players. They do the contracts, the pre-training camp, the training camp, the preseason, and then the season begins. I mean, it's clockwork, man. I mean, that's why the NFL, I think, is actually a really great organization because not just, I mean, everybody wakes up the day after the Super Bowl finishes and they go through it all over again. And it's a great rhythm that they have and predictable and they succeed.
I like that, a predictable rhythm, because very few other things are going to be predictable as a CEO. There will be all kinds of challenges coming up in all kinds of ways. So being able to bring the predictability within you is powerful.
And by the way, that gives you consistency. And what people need from leaders is consistency, right? Like you show up today and you're happy and you're nice to work with. All right, well,
Yeah.
you show up tomorrow and you had a bad night. Can you still show up happy? Can you still show up for the team that you work with? Like some people don't realize that they need to learn that. So being a leader, it's not about yourself. It's about the people that work for you and with you. So
Mhm.
you as a leader don't have the luxury of saying, I had a bad night last night, so I'm going to show up a little pissed off. You don't have that luxury, man. You need to be able to show up in a consistent way, authentically, right? So, one, I'm not suggesting you should fake it. I'm not suggesting you should say, "Oh, I feel terrible, but I'm just gonna fake it." Hey, Kyle, I care about you. Bullshit. I don't really care about you, but I'll fake it. I'm not suggesting that, right? I think you should be authentic. All I'm saying that as a leader, you have a responsibility to show up for your people, and you can't just show up crappy because I had a bad night or super happy because I had a great day. I think if people don't know who's showing up, is it Jackal or is it Hyde that's showing up? And people that work for you want to make sure that they are successful, right? So unfortunately, they're kind of tuning themselves to you as well. So if you show up kind of pissed off, then they're going to be afraid to bring things to you. And if you show up totally welcoming one day and the next day you show up totally pissed off, it's going to be hard for them. They're going to be like, wait, who came today? Was it pissed off Patrick or happy Patrick? Who do I,
Yeah.
who do I manage myself? to today.
How I relate to this is kind of a balance of authenticity and vulnerability,
Yes.
and how to use vulnerability. And I think speakers, and particularly like CEOs, like the ones you work with, have a difficult time being vulnerable. And I think that most people see vulnerability in the wrong way. If you go on stage and you try and be vulnerable as like, oh, look at the pain I've gone through, don't you love me, or something like that, that's what a lot of people think it is. Or like, please like me more. That's terrible. And somebody in a CEO role would never try to be vulnerable in that way. And I think when they think authentic, it's what they're thinking. But when you change the perspective of vulnerability to share weaknesses, past, present, and doing it not in service to yourself, not trying to get what you want, but sharing it in a way that leads them, that shows, hey, I care about you, the person that you're talking to, the reason that you're talking about this, and showing the different flaws that you have. Yeah, maybe I'm not at my best today, or maybe we did take a big hit, but I'm doing this because I'm committed to this vision, or I'm committed to all of you, my team, and making it in service to others, which I think is one of the big things that you point out is essential for really being successful in that. And you can smell the difference between somebody who is speaking and trying to use their pain to get something from you instead of offer something to
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, and the other thing that I do is, and I know this sounds a bit selfish, but I typically only work for CEOs that I like. So
I do the same thing. Yeah,
it's hard to,
I'm selfish.
I laugh when I say that because it feels a bit selfish. But for me, I serve these leaders deeply. I care about them deeply, and I found that it was kind of hard for me to care about you deeply if I don't even like you.
Mm-hmm.
So any CEO that I serve, I want them to succeed and to succeed to the fullest. So I love them. I care about them. I care deeply about them. And I found that I have to do that. Otherwise, I may not even have the courage to share difficult things with them. Because if you're more worried about your paycheck, you're going to shy away from the difficult conversations. But if I'm more worried about you and more concerned about you and less concerned about my paycheck, then I'm going to take that risk and share more about you. So for me, I've made it a habit of really only taking on clients where we have really good chemistry, where I can truly care about your success.
Yeah.
And, I tell people often that when they work with me, they're going to become a better version of themselves. They're going to become better at work, better husbands, better wives, better fathers, better mothers. They're going to be better because I believe that you have one life, integrated life. You have a whole life. You can't just say, look, I'm going to be this way at work, and then I'm going to be different when I go home. You can say that, but it's not going to happen. Like you're the same person. So how you show up at work influences how you show up at home, and how you show up at home significantly influences how you show up at work. And so that's why for me, I like to help folks be the best version of themselves. So in my newer book, right, The Journey to CEO Success, there's 7 key practices there. The first 2 are really about starting with yourself. I believe that every leader, every CEO needs to work on themselves. So the first 2 practices about being curious and leveling up, growing yourself. Because if your company's growing and you're not growing, then at some point your company outgrows you. So the first 2 practices are about yourself. I also believe that if you're a leader and you're not willing to work on yourself, then you don't have the right to work on anybody else. I'm pretty strong about that. And then the next thing is that I think you should be faithful with what you've been given. So the next practice is to have an early warning system to know when bad stuff is coming. You can take care ahead of time. And then the next practice is about making sure that your team is fully aligned so you don't waste anybody's resources, right? So start with yourself, be faithful with what you've been given. And then after that, I want you to build the right environment so people around you can be successful. And that's about your culture. And that's about making sure that your people ecosystem is strong. And then and only then do you work on your strategy. And the last practice is to build your strategies around your core customer, the most important customer that you serve, and serve them well. So those are the 7 key practices
Yeah.
in my book.
I'm curious, in your life, what have these 7 key practices added up to? And I'm asking for a specific moment in time and space, somewhere along this line where you realized, wow, I've become the best version of myself. These practices are working for me. Maybe you were on vacation with your family and getting to enjoy yourself. Is there a specific moment? I imagine there's many, and
Yeah,
I want to acknowledge you for that, but pick
yeah.
one for us for the sake of the
So
audience.
the first thing I would say is that you don't really become the best version of yourself. I think it's an ongoing journey.
Yeah.
So I did this joke I say about the humble person. The humble person woke up one day and said, I've done it. I've achieved humility. And in that split second, he or she lost it. Right? You can never wake up and say, I'm the epitome of humility now. You just become proud. Right? So likewise, I think you never stop growing. I think the best version of me is I haven't discovered it yet. Right? So it's a continuous journey. But to answer your question, when did I realize this was actually not too long ago? I think some of these things I've been doing, but not doing them intentionally.
Mm.
Writing this book took 3 years. I think in that 3 year journey, so it's about probably 5 years ago that when I started working on this book. So in the 3 year journey it took to write this book, the Journey to CEO Success. I think the gift to myself is writing a book like that forces you to actually curate what you have. Michael and I, when we wrote this book, we said, okay, let's curate the best practices that we've had that help us be successful over the last 25 years. And I've been very blessed. I've got quite a few customers where I've had very long coaching relationships with 10 years, 12 years, 15 years. So we were able to pull stories and moments from all these customers where I've had at least 7 years of coaching experience with them. I've seen them in the journey. What is this? What are the similarities, both good stuff and bad stuff that we've seen, and that's how we curated these 7 practices. And
Would you describe for me the office or the place that you most wrote most of the book in?
I would say that the place I wrote most of the work in was probably in multiple places, frankly, but the environment would be one that is calm, that I've been able to reduce myself away from the distractions. Some days I wake up to try and write, and it's just like too much stuff going on, right? So I'm not getting much stuff. But I would say that the days when I was able to really step away from stuff and be able to reflect strongly, to see both be more, in a more neutral place where I can see what's working and what's not working. Those are the times when I think I did the best work.
Well, we've come a long way, Patrick. Are you ready to hear your story?
I'm excited and curious to hear it. Yeah.
How did I get this far? I can remember one morning waking up, staring at the ceiling, 7 years into a company that I had been building. I had a great team. I had success in the way that I defined it, which was more money, more growth, and more of the very simple metrics of success. But as every day passed, I started to find myself resenting my business, which was strange to me. I was giving so much of myself away, working so hard, putting so much in. And this is something that I really was proud of for a long time, my ability to outwork everybody else. But now, 7 years in, I'm getting worn out. I'm kind to my people, but everybody's working really hard, and I can tell that everybody else is getting worn out too because I'm pushing them so hard and doing all of these things. They're not making their own choices very much. They're always coming back to me with problems and buyers and things and just taking a little bit more out of me. The clients that I was working with, some were in alignment with my vision and some were really draining me. And I would come home ashamed in a lot of ways of how exhausted and frustrated I was and not feeling like I could show myself to my family. I can remember describing it one day to a close friend like I feel like a Chinese dish spinning around a lazy Susan, and customers and employees are taking pieces out of me time after time, and the plate feels empty. How in the world did I get here? I started to sit and reflect and maybe slow down for the first time in my life and started to think about what success as a CEO would really mean to me and where it would go. And I started to change how I saw my day to day and how I led my day to day. You see, I wanted to be coachable. I wanted to see my own blind spots and be able to move through things. I wanted to be courageous and make the tough decisions that were defining for my business. And I wanted to be committed to those, doing what was necessary to really grow. And when I mean grow, I don't just mean make more money as a company. I mean growing myself, my identity, my leadership in lockstep with my company growing in profits, in team, and in impact. And over the course of a few years and a lot of costly and painful mistakes, coaching many executives and experts just like you, and having my own businesses rise and sometimes fall, I began to put together the 7 core principles of the journey to CEO success. As I started to reflect on these and putting them together in a book over the course of this time, I noticed my days were starting to be different. I would wake up early, excited to do my work. The creative time that I set aside to write my book would also shape how I would lead my team, what I would be sharing with them, and why I would be doing this. It would impact how I showed up at home. And I found myself enjoying my life and my work. And I found myself being able to be the same person when I was at home with my family and when I was there. I was able to be flexible, and sometimes there were distractions or challenges, but I kept moving and kept writing. And I realized at the end of finishing this book that I had transformed myself in my own way by going through this process of clarifying and understanding and writing this love letter to myself all those years ago when I felt like the empty Chinese dish. Now, for me, that was happening in my company 7 years in. For you, it could be happening at your first year. It could be happening 30 years in. You could be making 10 million. You could be making 300 million with a small team or a whole army. But the truth is if the only thing we bring to the table as CEOs is our ability to work hard, there's going to be a limitation. And if we can learn what it truly takes to be successful and what it really means to be successful as a CEO, then we can make a bigger impact in the world, in ourselves, in our families, and in our teams. And that's what I'm here to share with you today. There you go.
Thank you, Kyle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's always fun. And I've seen you have validated my own journey and my own thoughts and the process that I take people with. It's been so wonderful getting to discover your magic today, Patrick. Do you have any closing thoughts for us today? And where can we go to learn more about you?
Well, if you just come to patrickthean.com, it'll take you to the right place, and you can explore and more stuff with me. My podcast runs on multiple platforms, but all those links are on patrickthean.com. So my book, if you are a CEO looking to figure out yourself, the journey to CEO success is strong. If you're someone that really wants a methodology to run your business with, the Rhythm book is just as strong for that. It's stronger actually for that purpose. Just come, invite you to explore with me what I'm doing and see if it helps you.
Thank you so much today for sharing your wisdom, the 7 secrets to CEO success on the Story Engine podcast today.
Thank you, Kyle.